Good morning and greetings from Victoria, British Columbia, specifically the University of Victoria on a rather damp late October morning. I gather while I'm speaking to you, I'll actually be in London and shortly catching a train up to Liverpool, where I understand you're meeting at the moment in Anfield. I wish you every success with the Northwest Alcohol Summit, and I hope that it's an opportunity to forge strong partnerships and develop effective new strategies to reduce harm from alcohol. Now, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about some research we've been doing here in Canada on minimum pricing, which I know is a very hot topic in the United Kingdom, with Scotland still trying to introduce minimum unit pricing against apparently the wishes of the combined force of many alcohol corporations and even other European governments who want to enforce the sale of cheap alcohol, it would seem, upon the citizens of Scotland. So there's several reasons why we got into doing research on minimum pricing. We have certain advantages here in Canada for this kind of work. One is we actually do have minimum pricing implemented here. Courtesy of our wonderful alcohol monopolies, 8 out of 10 provinces in Canada have some kind of alcohol monopoly, which means the government actually is in the business of selling alcohol to its citizens and collecting revenues for, you know, the profits essentially go to the government from their liquor stores. We also have private liquor stores in British Columbia, so we have a hybrid system. The advantage here is that the government sets floor prices on beer, wine and spirits, and better still from a research point of view, at seemingly random moments they change that minimum price or upwards with inflation, not in a regular way and not for all beverages at the same time. So we have a lovely natural experiment which is easier to perform because that same alcohol monopoly collects obsessively detailed information about how much alcohol is sold in every liquor outlet in the whole province of British Columbia. So we've been able to get data for like 20 years on all the alcohol sold in the province and look at how that has changed in relation to the prices that have been for the floor prices and other prices, and also look at what has happened to harm. So I'll just try and give you a quick thumbnail sketch. We've published a lot of this work in a report that's available on the website of the Institute for Alcohol Studies in London. Their website is iac.org.uk, and there's links to a lot of the published papers like the American Journal of Public Health or Addiction. So the first, I guess the major interest here behind our research was to see whether your Sheffield Group's model, which I'm sure you've all heard of the Sheffield model, certainly everyone internationally in the alcohol policy field has heard about how, like weather forecasters, they're trying to predict what would happen in the United Kingdom. It were policies on pricing and availability to change. What would happen to crime, government revenue, alcohol-related deaths, hospital admissions, economic costs, and so forth. We're able in Canada to see whether this type of forecasting, if you like the weather forecast, the forecast today, by the way, was for sunshine. You can probably see out the window that it's pouring with rain. So is the Sheffield model better than the weather forecasting models? That's one of the things we're able to look at. The first study, we simply looked at whether the price change altered consumption. 20 years of data. The bottom line of this study, without detail, is that a 10% increase in the floor price or minimum price of all the drinks led to a significant decline of 3.4% of total alcohol consumption. Not a huge effect, but significant. Then our second study looked at what happened in another province, in Saskatchewan. It's taken me a while to learn how to pronounce Saskatchewan, and it's somewhere in the middle of Canada, in the prairies, quite a different situation. Saskatchewan is, if you like, the poster child for minimum pricing of alcohol in Canada. For some extraordinary reason, in 2010, they decided to introduce simultaneously higher minimum prices on all alcoholic beverages at the same time. And it was altered to reflect the alcohol content. So a strong beer would have a higher minimum price than a low beer. In effect, this is almost the same as the minimum unit pricing concept that you guys in the United Kingdom have been debating and looking to introduce. We found a much larger impact on consumption, which is likely due to it being applied simultaneously, comprehensively, and reflecting the ethanol content of drinks. So a 10% increase in the minimum price in Saskatchewan led to more than an 8% reduction in total consumption. Also of interest was there was a shift created towards lower alcohol content beers and wines, which is obviously a very good outcome for public health. So you're probably saying, well, what does this matter? What does this have relevance to harm? Our next papers, and there's still some more in the works. We've had some papers looking at hospital admissions related to alcohol and deaths. The one on hospital admissions showed very, very clear significant effects looking in British Columbia across the 89 local health areas of the province. So like 89 little experiments looking at what happened each time the minimum price changed to alcohol-related acute hospital admissions like injuries and poisonings, or the chronic ones, the diseases, the cancers, the liver diseases, the gastrointestinal diseases. Simply, there were immediate impacts on the acute outcomes, the injuries and poisonings, around about a 9% reduction in these for a 10% increase in the floor price or minimum price. And interestingly, 2 or 3 years later, or after 2 years later, the diseases, which you would imagine might take longer to respond because it's a build-up of effects of alcohol over years that causes them, they declined to a similar degree, around about 9% after 2 years. We found similar effects for deaths. There were immediate and delayed effects. And most recently, we've found evidence of impacts on crime, and very specifically on alcohol-related traffic offences as opposed to non-alcohol-related traffic offences. So a very discrete impact. When the minimum price changed, it affected alcohol-related traffic crashes and offences, but not the non-alcohol-related ones. There were also impacts on property crime and crimes against the person. So how did this compare with the weather forecast? I have to say the Sheffield model is fantastic. You're so lucky to have that group. You'll get a presentation from them shortly. You're so lucky to have them in England. Their predictions are accurate, but they are conservative. So if they predict that the sun is coming out and it's going to be a good day when you introduce minimum prices, they haven't gone far enough. It's going to be a spectacular day. There will be bright sunshine and you'll all be in your shirt sleeves. Because basically the reductions in harm we found were at least 2 or 3 times greater than were predicted by the model. And that's even when they applied their model to Canada. Here in British Columbia, their model predictions were far more conservative than what we have observed in practice. So once again, greetings from Canada. I look forward to being in Liverpool later this evening after you're seeing this for another event which I believe is at Anfield. I'm very happy to be going to such a famous location in Liverpool. Very best wishes for a successful day, and thank you for the opportunity to share my work with you.